Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 585 for the 1st of October. Let's start off with the southern front. We have nothing over the southern front. I think. Oh yes, we actually have. We have to zoom in a bit. So the Ukrainian forces, the fighting between the Russians and the Ukrainians on the Kozatsky Island. The other name is actually called the Pereyaslawski Island, was corroborated by the Russian Defense Ministry. So yesterday we mentioned information from Rybar suggests that the Russian forces attacked the Ukrainian Recon Battalion. And this information is from the pro-Russian source. So we actually have the corroboration from the Russian Defense Ministry in their 1st of October report, reporting on the of the things that happened the day before. So this is actually now corroborated. But the way how they report is that they say that the two sabotage and recon group was repelled on the Pereyaslawski Island. So yeah, Rybar reported as a Russian offensive because the Ukrainians has been there for some time already. So let's see how this goes. Over at the Zaporizhia front. So this is Zaporizhia. Oops, that was so thin. Too thin, no good. You need to be thicker. Then got feeling. So over at the Zaporizhia front, at the Orikhiv sector, this is the Orikhiv sector. The Ukrainian forces continue their offensive in the Melitopol direction. If they're ever gonna get there. So over at the Robotine and Verbove region, I think I should make it thicker, give it more feeling. So now more feeling, very feely already. So the south of Robotine, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that they defended two attacks. So I think two attacks referring to one attack each at Robotine and Verbove. So one attack at Robotine and the near Robotine. So they didn't even mention Novo Prokopivka. So they are still referring the fighting near to Robotine, and the other fighting is actually at Verbove. And so this is the one by the Russian Defense Ministry. Ukrainian Defense Ministry says that the Russians are attacking in the area of Verbove. So which means that if both sides are attacking, this is actually a pretty much a positional battle of sorts. They are both just clashing to contest most likely this first tree line that was contested multiple times, because this tree line is pivotal for the Ukrainians to actually conduct attacks into Verbove itself, which the Russians has been conducting major counteroffensive to retake and heavy bombardments to make sure that the Ukrainians cannot capture this ground. We have geolocation of Ukrainian forces. This is geolocated by Creamy Caprice. Of Ukrainian forces getting attacked by FPV drones, if I'm not wrong. And so the Ukrainians are still here. They're definitely still here, but this geolocation is a bit far. So let's see how this goes. We have another geolocation of the front line over at this northwestern part of Verbove. So this basically is a geolocation of the front line. There was some attacks in this area here. So yeah, so this actually corroborates that the front line is pretty much this tree line. This is the tree line that they battle over. So that's about it. Over at the Orikhiv sector, we have no more information about any fighting over at Huyaipole sector about the Russians' attack in Chervone. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry did not mention this. I wonder if it's a weekend thing. So we shall continue to monitor and see if this is reported. No, because usually Mondays, as Monday comes back to there tends to be a lot more information than on Sunday. Sunday tends to be a more quieter day. Over at the Velika Novosilka sector, this is Velika Novosilka sector. There is continued fighting being reported at Prione, the Russian Defense Ministry, on two separate occasions. One is in part of the SITREP that is probably describing things happening on the 30th of September. And in the latest information coming from the Vostok Group of Forces, both mention about Ukrainian attacks over at Prione. But the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, however, mentioned about fighting in the south of Novoderivka. They say that in the area of Derivka, they defended 8 different attacks from the Russians. 8. That is more than the fighting usually happens over at Marinka. So that's quite a bit, which means that there must be some kind of things happening around here that we are not seeing from any other sources, if we are to believe the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And this is actually also happening over in the south of Rivnopil. However, the information at the south of Rivnopil is actually reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. They mentioned that they eliminated a Ukrainian infantry group south of Rivnopil, which is actually Rivnopil, which means the Russian forces are also attacking in this direction. So we have this attack in this way around in the northern part of Prione. I'm not too sure what to read of it, because the information coming from defense ministries tends to be very vague. So we shall continue to wait for further corroborations from Ryba or Deep State or some other sources. So far, no one really talked much about it. Ryba sometimes talk about Prione, but nothing much. So we don't have anything about Uruzaine and Staromayorsky region, despite there was some information the day before. We move on into the Donetsk front. So this is the Donetsk front. At the Donetsk front, we have geolocation of the front line over at the northwestern part of Novomayorsky. This is geolocated by Creamy Caprice. It's unknown if this is archive footage or this is something recent. The video footage is of some trenches around this area here, where there is actually some battles within the trenches. So it's very close quarter combat kind of thing. They are just mere meters apart, and they are shooting at each other. So not too sure what is exactly this video footage taken at when, or what is happening. So yeah, I can't really tell. Over at the Marinka region, we have the Russian forces continue their attack in the northeastern part of Novomihailivka, with the Russians continuing their attack. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. They reported 8 attacks between Marinka and Novomihailivka. And the fighting at Novomihailivka, as per at Marinka, as per mentioned in the same report, there is geolocation of Ukrainian forces within the Menigeri. Menigeri is this area here. This is the Menigeri fortified position, and so there is a drone footage of Ukrainian forces at this position. There's also drone footage of Ukrainian forces within Boyeda itself, and this actually confirms that the Ukrainians still have full control over Boyeda. So that's all from the Donetsk front. We move on into the Avdiivka front. This is the Avdiivka front. At the Avdiivka front, we have some geolocations around Opitne. This is in the north of Opitne by Creamy Caprice, another one over in the northeastern part. This helps to clarify the front line that actually confirms I think the pro-Ukrainian, or is it a neutral mapping, seems to be more correct. Over the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioned some attacks in the area of Avdiivka. They say that they repelled, but not sure exactly where this is referring to. The Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting at Krasnohorivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And Ukrainian Defense Ministry also mentioned they repelled attack at Stepove and Vesely. Vesely is this small little village over here. So the Russians allegedly is attacking in this direction as well as towards Stepove from the area of Krasnohorivka. Whereas the Russians say that the Ukrainians are attacking Krasnohorivka. So it is unclear, but as you can see, the tide of war suddenly has changed. The Russians are the one that is doing the offensive rather than the Ukrainians, most of it. Even at the region at Robotine and Verbove, it just feels more like the Russians are doing more things. Over at the Bakhmut front. So this is Bakhmut front. This is the southern and the northern part. In the southern part, we have continued fighting being reported over at Kodyomivka. According to Marishnikov, the pro-Ukrainian source reported that the western part of the village is currently a grey zone. And this grey zone is spreading eastward. So the Ukrainian forces are holding the outside of Kodyomivka, and the Russians are holding the eastern part, with the center part becoming a better zone where the Ukrainians are conducting their offensive actions, and the Russians has been pushed back by the Ukrainians in the area of Kodyomivka. Fighting is still ongoing, and there is information of Russian forces forming a force in the eastern part of Andriivka. So they successfully rotated with reserve and everything, and they're likely to go to conduct more offensive or counter-offensive from the Russian side against the Ukrainians. And this is evident at a region of Andriivka, as the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russians tried to attack to recover lost positions. And however, the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned that there is still Ukrainian attacks in the region of Andriivka. And in the Klishchiivka region itself, I think most significant is actually a shot down report of Sukhoi 25 from the Ukrainian Air Force over Klishchiivka. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, and this is the first Ukrainian aircraft that was shot down over a very, very long time. Of significance is that I haven't really seen a Russian aircraft shot down for even longer time by the Ukrainians. So as per reported by the Ukrainians that they shoot down a Russian aircraft, it's really, really a long time. I haven't really seen it for a long time. The fighting at Klishchiivka continued to be reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, with the Myroshnikov saying that the Russians are conducting counterattacks against the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians are largely doing the offensive. There are some counterattack against the Ukrainians, but we do not have much info about all these things. So let's see how this goes. There is geolocation of the front line the Ukrainian forces over this position, where they are still conducting offensive operations around this northern part of Klishchiivka, with the Russian forces holding this railway region. So moving on, we go into the northern flank of the Bakhmut front. We have fighting being reported at Yakhidne and Berkivka region, according to Myroshnikov. Let's take it with a pinch of salt, because Myroshnikov talks about a lot of things, then sometimes we don't really know what's happening because he don't do mappings. Same thing, this is the same report from Orikovo-Vasilivka, but it is conceivable that the Russians are pushing in Orikovo-Vasilivka, because we have the claims of the Russian capture of Orikovo-Vasilivka. Deep State UA previously have already discounted it, but this means that the Russians are definitely still making a push to capture this town. And the Ukrainians actually conducted this is actually outdated information, I didn't see it. Okay, so that's 29th. Okay, that's it from the northern part of Bakhmut front. As you can see, there is more red icon than blue icons. Moving on into the Sivas front, previously we have some reports about fighting at Vasile and Sperne. All this is gone. No fighting at Bilohorivka. Maybe it's a Sunday thing, as I mentioned. We move into Crimea. This is Crimea and our Crimea front. At the Crimea front, we have fighting reported within the Serebransky Forestry. The Russian Defense Ministry Center Group of Forces reported that they launched attacks against the Ukrainian 67 Mechanized and the 12 Azov Special Brigade. Let me refresh the page. And the Russian Defense Ministry also reported that the Ukrainian 63rd Mechanized Brigade and the 12th Azov were actually counter-attacking as well. They were attacking against the Russian forces. So there is this exchange of attacks between the two sides. So let's see how this goes. But largely, I will say that we will not be able to see much difference between in the fighting inside the Serebransky Forestry, because this forest is just very huge. This arrow line is already 13 kilometers. We can't really 18. Is it 18? 18 kilometers, and it's a huge area, and we don't really know what's the point of fighting within this forest. And there's fighting within the Dibrovad region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, with the Ukrainians attacking. This is part of the same report of the Ukrainians attack within the Serebransky Forestry. The Russian attacks is Serebransky Forestry and Torske. So the Torske is being reported by the Center Group of Forces about their attack against the same group of forces. So this skirmish and bout between the two continues. Over in the northern part, on the northern end of this Crimea front at Makiivka, we have Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that they defended against a Russian attack in the area of Makiivka. So this is the first report of an attack in the region of Makiivka for a very, very long time. We haven't seen any reports of fighting around Makiivka for a very, very long time. So this is interesting. As I mentioned, the Russians seems to be on the ascendancy, or they are taking over the initiative after the Ukrainians offensive seems to pretty much ended effectively. They are still conducting offensive operations, but is nowhere at the level where you can call it an offensive. Those big arrow offensive operations is no longer feel like that is the case. It's pretty much a tactical thing, the local tactical thing where they try to improve their positions. So this is pretty much what's happening right now. We go on to the Sviatove and Kupiansk front. There is no new updates regarding these two fronts. Like I said, this could be a Sunday thing. No fighting between around the border regions between the two countries. And that's it. This is the summary for the day of 585 for the 1st of October. So just some summary. The Ukrainian offensive seems to be really dying down. Basically, is winding down. We're fighting over at the Orikhiv sector near Verbove and around Robotine, as well as in the southern part of Bakhmut front. In the Klishevka, Andriivka, Kudyamivka region, as well as some parts within the Crimea front. This is pretty much what the Ukrainians have right now. This is all the Ukrainians have in terms of their offensive operations. And whatever happening in the Serebranske forestry, I think, is pretty much just a tactical thing. Is not the kind of big offensive. And the situation within the Robotine, Verbove region has basically turned into much more of a tactical thing. It's like a positional warfare kind of thing. They're trying to hold whatever positions they can as long as they can. It seems like that case. The only part where the Ukrainians still seems to be pushing is in the region in the South Bakhmut. So in the South Bakhmut, they are still pushing in the Klishevka region, and over in Andriivka, they're trying to fan out from this area here, as well as trying to capture Kudyamivka. This seems to be pretty much the case, but however, the Russians are putting a strong line of defense, and there is a Russian force that has regrouped, or maybe reinforced, and they are ready to conduct a counterattack, which is already reported over at the Andriivka region. The Russians are holding their line on the eastern part of Kudyamivka, and they are trying their best to hold back the Ukrainians, but this is pretty much the only place in Ukraine right now, the only front line that the Ukrainians are seriously pushing. Pretty much the Ukrainian summer offensive, or spring, or whatever offensive you want to call it, has pretty much run to a close. And the Russians are pretty much starting to take over the initiative and doing this raiding attacks over the front lines. So not just some counterattack over in the Klishevka region, they are counterattacking at the Andriivka. There is push over at the Bakivka, Yakitne region. They are trying to capture Orikovo, Vasilivka, and this is just Bakhmut front. And they are also pushing back over at Torske and Serebranske forestry. A new attack at Makievka, and over in the Adievka front, we have pushing in Vasily, pushing towards Stepove. There is some attacks around the Adievka region, and also in the Marinka region, they continue their push for Marinka. They are starting a new offensive against Novomihailivka, which I have reported over the past few days. So that it was 11 to 12, 25, 29. So it was sporadic, but it seems to be more and more sustained with another one on the 1st of October. And then we have the Russians also pushing out in the south of Novodarivka, south of Rivnopil. The Ukrainians are trying to push back at Prione, but it's not going to be much, because the Russians are making this push, which is reported by both Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And then we also see the counterattack of the Russians in the Verbove region. Previously, we also have reported about the attack in South Robotine previously. So if you look in this direction, especially even Kozaksky Island, the Russians had pushed in the previous SITREP that I mentioned. The Russians has taken over the initiative on the ground combat. And I think this is pretty disappointing, I would say, for the Ukrainians that has put in so much hope into this counteroffensive. And when I zoom out, honestly, we can't really tell much of a difference. I think if I colored I should use a different color. So So the Ukrainians, maybe this area here, and then there is some bit here, and some bit here. Yeah, this is pretty much the success of the Ukrainian offensive. Is very, very small, and this is after the expanding so much forces, equipment, and this is not even considered breaking the first line of defense, in my opinion. This is the first line. However, the first line leads to a second line over here. So even if the Ukrainians break through in this area here, they are still meeting this line, which may or may not considered first or second line, because you know, when we say first or second line, this is just arbitrary. It is a continuous web of defenses, and they pretty much entered into this pocket. You know, it's like a ground. You know, you dig a hole. They look like a trench line. This is a soldier. You know, he's standing over here holding his rifle. You know, this is pretty much a trench. You know, this is basically, you know, that's what it looks like to me. It's not far. The direction is supposedly Melitopol. This is the strategic objective. This is supposed to be what is supposed to happen. It did not happen. They got bogged down over here. How many more Leopard tanks do they need? I do not know to break through this. It's a huge dampener for this pro-Ukrainian or anti-Russia side. So that's the reality. And also in the SITREP, I also mentioned about the shutdown of a Sukhoi 25 of the Ukrainians over Klishchiivka, and I mentioned this is actually the first aircraft shot down for a long time. The previous two aircraft that was destroyed was on the ground. So shootdowns are quite rare nowadays. But what is more significant is the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and the Air Force have not reported a shootdown of a Russian aircraft or helicopters for a very, very long time, even longer time. So I do not know how the Ukrainians are going to deal with this entire war situation right now with the severe lack of surface-to-air missiles. It's really clear that the Russian Air Force is conducting more and more risky bombings from as far as I can tell. So anyway, do press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.